What happens when science fiction becomes an Amazon listing? Not too long ago, the idea of having a robot in your house was something out of a Spielberg film or a Japanese anime. It belonged to a future that always seemed just a little out of reach, the kind you might dream about but never truly expect to live in. And yet here we are. That future has quietly arrived, and most people haven't even noticed. Today, robots are no longer locked behind glass in research labs. They're not just concepts in sci-fi novels or prototypes wheeled onto TED stages. They're commercial products, available, affordable, and increasingly invisible. They're cleaning your floors, assisting surgeons, delivering your groceries, driving your cars, managing warehouses, and even teaching your kids. What used to be wild fantasy is now a matter of convenience, logistics, and product-market fit. Let's be clear. We're not talking about humanoid androids with glowing eyes and fluent conversation, at least not yet. But that's part of the illusion. The robots that are quietly integrating into our lives don't look like the future we imagined. They look like small boxes with wheels, or sleek vacuum discs, or robotic arms behind factory walls, or smart speakers with names like Alexa or Siri, interfaces we interact with daily without even thinking of them as robots. And that's exactly how the shift is happening. This transformation is commercial first, cultural second. Companies aren't selling you robots. They're selling you products that solve problems, and those just happen to be robots underneath. The branding focuses on convenience. Clean your house while you're away. Automate your lawn mowing. Schedule deliveries. Control your lights, music, thermostat. And behind all those functions is automation, sensors, AI, the very ingredients that make a machine autonomous, reactive, intelligent. In short, robotic. Let's look at a few examples. The robot vacuum cleaner is already a household item in millions of homes. Brands like Roomba, Roborock, and Ecovacs have turned what was once a luxury item into a must-have convenience. These machines map your home, avoid obstacles, schedule cleaning runs, return to their docks automatically, and some even empty themselves. This is autonomy. This is robotics. And it's been normalized so seamlessly that people don't even think of it as futuristic anymore. Lawn care robots, robotic mowers that operate like Roombas for your yard, are gaining traction. They're becoming popular in Europe and now breaking into the North American market. They're programmable, weather-aware, and reduce human effort to near zero. For the price of a mid-range smartphone, you can have a machine manage one of the most common chores of suburban life. Then there's the quiet industrial explosion. In warehouses, Amazon uses over 750,000 robots as of recent reports. These bots sort packages, move shelves, and manage logistics with terrifying efficiency. They're not humanoid, but they've redefined labor at scale. Autonomous delivery robots are being tested on sidewalks. Drones are delivering medicine. Robot chefs can cook personalized meals in high-end restaurants. Hospitals use robots for surgical precision, disinfection, and even companionship. And the point here isn't just that robots exist. It's that they're being sold, mass-produced, integrated. They are a product category now, not a prototype. They are being positioned not as marvels, but as normal. This is what makes the shift so profound. Because while everyone waits for the robot apocalypse or a humanoid uprising, the real robot revolution is happening in shopping carts and smart homes. This brings us to the most interesting and perhaps the most overlooked part of the story, our psychological adaptation. The more we interact with these machines in mundane, non-threatening ways, the more we accept them. The fear vanishes, the wonder fades, and what replaces it is dependency. You don't fear your dishwasher, but it's a robot in the mechanical sense. You don't fear your smart speaker, but it responds to your voice and can automate tasks. You might not call your Nest thermostat a robot, but it senses your presence, adjusts behavior based on data, and learns from your routines. When everything around you quietly becomes intelligent, what does it mean to be normal? That's where this transformation gets cultural. As robots become appliances, our definition of what is technological starts to blur. It used to be easy. Robots were machines with arms, legs, and blinking lights. Today they might be invisible, embedded in walls, or sitting quietly on your countertop, and the more passive and polite they are, the more deeply they integrate. This new wave of robotic commercialization isn't just about machines doing tasks. It's about how those tasks change our expectations. When your vacuum cleans autonomously, you stop thinking of cleaning as your job. When your lights dim at your voice command, manual switches feel outdated. When your child interacts with an AI tutor that can answer any question, the idea of human-only education starts to wobble. Every new robot doesn't just take over labor, it shifts our default behavior. That's powerful, and it's irreversible. Even more interesting is how robotics is reshaping design itself. Take architecture. Homes are now being built with robot-friendly layouts in mind. Fewer obstacles, open floor plans, smart appliance integration. Commercial buildings include robot-accessible corridors, charging stations, and automated service areas. The environment is adapting to the machines, not just the other way around. And this has huge implications. Now ask yourself, what happens when the default version of a home includes a robot? Not as an add-on, but as a standard? Just like plumbing or electricity. That's when we cross the line, from early adoption to societal shift. That's when the robot isn't your tool anymore, it's your environment. It surrounds you, assists you, watches you, learns from you. The implications extend beyond consumer convenience. Economically, this opens a new class of products. Mid-tier robots designed for specific demographics, elder care bots in aging countries, educational bots for remote learning, service bots for hospitality. The cost curve is dropping, customization is rising. And once robots are modular, updatable, and rentable, they become truly scalable. We're approaching a phase where you might not buy a robot outright. You might subscribe to one, rent it for a week, pay a monthly fee, let it learn your needs. Let it evolve. Robots as a service is already real in the business world. It's only a matter of time before it enters your home. So here we are, living in a world that once felt distant. Sci-fi didn't lie. It just looked flashier than reality. The robots are here. They just don't always look like the ones in movies. And that's the real magic. Because the moment you stop noticing them, that's when they've truly arrived. But here's the question that should really make you pause. If robots are already entering our homes, what part of our lives will they change next? Once we allow robots into our homes, even in simple helper roles, we're doing something far more significant than buying a gadget. We're opening up our private spaces to autonomous systems, and that changes everything. Your home is supposed to be the one place that's entirely under your control. But when a device can hear you, map your house, learn your schedule, and respond to your voice, that control begins to shift. Subtly, but undeniably. We're not just inviting machines into our lives, we're giving them access to our rhythms, routines, and personal spaces. And even though these devices are marketed as tools of convenience, they're powered by algorithms that observe, record, and often transmit data. That's not a dystopian claim. It's a technical reality. Most commercial robots today are connected. They rely on cloud infrastructure, mobile apps, firmware updates, and real-time analytics. This means your smart vacuum isn't just cleaning. It's also sending layout data to the cloud. Your lawn robot isn't just mowing. It's also collecting environmental data. Your smart assistant doesn't just respond to your command. It may also store your voice, learn your preferences, and refine its model using your inputs. So while we think of robots as servants, they're actually becoming participants in our daily lives. They're not passive machines. They're interactive systems that adapt and evolve, and that's where the implications start stacking up. Let's consider dependency. The more comfortable we become with automated assistance, the less we exercise certain skills. Just as GPS made our spatial memory weaker and calculators reduced our reliance on mental math, robots will begin to dull other human functions, from cleaning, organizing, and scheduling, to even remembering things. It's not that these machines take away knowledge, but they outsource responsibility. And that outsourcing comes at a cost. Reduced awareness, reduced resilience, and reduced friction. Which might sound good, until you realize that friction is where we grow. In parallel, there's the economic effect. As home robots become cheaper and more diverse, they begin to change what we consider normal domestic life. Think about how dishwashers, microwaves, and washing machines redefined family roles. Now imagine robots that cook meals, fold laundry, fetch groceries, or help kids with homework. The impact isn't just personal convenience, it's socio-economic restructuring. Household labor has always been a major source of unpaid work, often gendered and invisible. With robots taking over that domain, entire dynamics around parenting, caregiving, and housework begin to shift. In wealthy countries, this might mean more time for creativity, rest, or family. But in developing nations, where domestic labor is often done by human workers, this could lead to mass displacement and job loss at an entirely different level. Even more nuanced is the emotional shift that comes with robotic companionship. Social robots are being developed to provide comfort, conversation, and care. They can detect emotions, remember preferences, and simulate empathy. For children, the elderly, or people with disabilities, these machines may offer much-needed assistance and interaction. But they also raise difficult questions. Can simulated care ever replace real emotional connection? If a machine responds to your sadness with soothing words, is that care or programming? The answer isn't simple, but it's clear that we are beginning to assign meaning to machines in ways we never did before. We name them. We talk to them. We even get frustrated when they don't understand us. This is more than interface design. It's psychological bonding. And it's already happening, especially among the younger generation growing up with AI-based toys, voice assistants, and robot pets. For them, interacting with an intelligent system isn't strange, it's natural. The line between tool and companion blurs further when robots begin to predict our needs before we state them. This is where AI and robotics fuse, in powerful ways. A home robot might notice that you're stressed based on your voice, suggest music, dim the lights, and brew tea, all before you ask. This anticipatory design feels magical at first, but it introduces a deeper question. How much agency are we giving up in exchange for comfort? Because every time we delegate a decision, we're letting go of a piece of control. And when a machine can make hundreds of micro-decisions on our behalf, that adds up. You're no longer just using a robot. You're living inside a behavioral feedback loop shaped by algorithms you didn't write and maybe don't fully understand. Another hidden impact is design standardization. As commercial robots become part of mainstream living, companies begin to design homes, furniture, appliances, and routines with robots in mind. You start to see robot-friendly furniture, couches with charging docks underneath, fridges that communicate with robotic chefs, pet feeders that sync with robotic routines. Homes may evolve toward cleaner lines, minimal clutter, and smoother surfaces to accommodate autonomous movement. That sounds subtle, but it's a huge cultural shift. It's not just about designing robots for homes, it's about designing homes for robots. That's how deep the integration is becoming. And in the process, human preferences start adapting, as often unconsciously, to machine convenience. You don't put shoes on the floor because the vacuum might get stuck. You don't rearrange furniture because it breaks the cleaning routine. Slowly, you modify your behavior to suit the robot. And when that becomes common across millions of homes, it changes what we define as good design. We've seen this kind of ecosystem shift before. When smartphones became dominant, entire industries redesigned around mobile-first experiences. With robots, the shift is space-first. Home layouts, product dimensions, movement patterns, even daily habits will subtly conform to what's easiest for autonomous machines to navigate. And here's where it becomes both exciting and unsettling. Robots will shape human culture, not just human tasks. Once we reach critical mass, kids will grow up assuming that certain things are just done by machines. A child born today may never learn to vacuum, mow a lawn, or even manually order groceries. That child might talk to AI assistants more than their siblings. They may feel comfort in robotic presence and awkwardness in silence. In other words, we're building a new default reality, and the architects are companies designing robots, not governments, not communities. And often not even ethicists. The default future is not one of dramatic takeover. It's a quiet, steady merging. You won't wake up one day and feel like you're in a robot-controlled world. You'll simply wake up and realize that life without them feels impossible. That's how dependence grows, not with a bang, but with a convenience. And here's the question we need to ask before it's too late. If we design our lives around robots, will we forget what it meant to live without them? As robots integrate deeper into everyday life, we arrive at a tipping point, not just of technology but of culture. Up to this point, the story of robotics has been largely about hardware, automation, and problem-solving. But when enough people start living with machines that watch, learn, adapt, and participate, the boundaries of culture begin to shift. We start to reorient what it means to be assisted, what it means to have privacy, and even what it means to own your own life. In the past, your home was a private domain. Today, it's a node in a connected system. The moment your robot vacuum maps your house and uploads that data for cloud-based optimization, your floor plan becomes metadata. When your home assistant listens to conversations to improve responses, your voice becomes input for a machine learning model. And when your robot anticipates your needs, it begins to shape your decisions, even if subtly. Let's pause here. This is where the narrative deepens. We are not just consumers of robotic tools. We are also the trainers, the data providers, and in a way the co-creators of these intelligent systems. Every time you interact with a home robot, you're refining it. You're teaching it what works and what doesn't. And the data you generate doesn't stay within your four walls. It's anonymized, aggregated, and fed into broader models that improve all units of that same type, or even entirely different classes of machines. This is the silent economy of modern robotics. The product you buy is not finished. It's evolving. And its evolution depends on you. That creates a feedback loop between humans and machines that's never existed before on this scale. Think about it. In previous industrial shifts, machines were static. A washing machine didn't get smarter after you used it for a year. A refrigerator didn't learn your habits and suggest improvements. But robots, especially those powered by AI, do. They learn from you. They grow around you. And in doing so, they embed themselves deeper into your routines. And here's the more nuanced truth. You adapt to them, too. Once you've lived with an assistant that reminds you of tasks, adjusts your lighting, orders groceries, or entertains your children, it becomes incredibly hard to go back. Your expectations change. Your patience shortens. Your standard for effort becomes lower. Tasks that once felt normal start to feel like friction. And in that sense, the robot hasn't just helped you, it's recalibrated your sense of what's worth doing. That's where cultural transformation kicks in. As a society, we begin to normalize things that would have once seemed indulgent, impractical, or futuristic. In the 1990s, people scoffed at the idea of talking to a machine. Today, we casually ask our phones to schedule appointments, define words, play music, or answer trivia. In 2030, we may think nothing of a robot following us around the house, quietly cleaning, monitoring air quality, managing digital calendars, and optimizing our health. And when enough people start doing it, it stops being strange. It becomes infrastructure. Think of electricity or the internet. Once rare, now essential. We don't question them, we don't marvel at them, we rely on them invisibly. Robotics is moving down the same path. What was once a novelty is becoming a norm, and that norm is being built in real time. But that shift raises new concerns, especially around who controls these systems. The more we rely on robots for comfort, care, or labor, the more power we hand over to the companies that make them. And unlike older tools, modern robots are software-driven. They can be updated remotely. Their behavior can be changed with a patch. Their permissions can be revoked. That means the product you buy today might behave differently tomorrow, depending on how it's programmed, who owns the data, or what policies are in place. We've already seen this in other smart devices. Cars that lose features unless you pay monthly fees, thermostats that become obsolete, or phones that throttle performance. Now imagine that dynamic applied to a robot that manages your home. If a subscription lapses, does your robot stop functioning? If a new feature is released, do you have to pay for it, even though the hardware already supports it. This creates a strange paradox. You own the device but not the intelligence. You pay for the product but the product can change. And that creates ethical and legal challenges the world hasn't fully addressed, because when robots are tied to networks, licenses and cloud dependencies, you're not just buying a machine, you're entering into a relationship. And like all relationships, it involves trust. Trust that the machine won't spy on you. Trust that your data won't be misused. Trust that updates won't break essential features. Trust that you won't be locked out of functionality because of policy changes. That trust isn't just a matter of UX. It's a matter of power, and power is shifting. The more we automate, the fewer things we control directly. Our homes become ecosystems, not just of furniture and walls, but of interconnected, intelligent entities. Each one performing its role, gathering its data, reporting to its servers. And when all these machines begin working together, lights, climate, cleaning, entertainment, security, health, we arrive at a form of machine-mediated living. That's the next frontier. Not just having robots in your life, but having your life optimized by a coordinated network of them. The vacuum talks to the air purifier. The fridge talks to your diet tracker. The lighting system syncs with your sleep patterns. The wellness robot adjusts your schedule. These aren't separate devices. They're components of a digital self. It sounds futuristic, and it is, but it's already beginning. Apple, Amazon, Google, and many startups are moving toward integrated ecosystems. With Matter, a new smart home standard, interoperability between brands is becoming smoother. And that means robotic systems will soon collaborate by design, not by hack. And in that world, the user isn't just a controller. The user becomes the context. Your preferences, habits, and moods shape the behavior of your environment. But to do that, the system must constantly observe you. This raises a crucial question. How much of your life are you willing to trade for automation? What does it really mean to live with robots? Not as tools you control, but as agents in your daily life. That's the question more people will be forced to consider, not in some speculative future, but right now. Because the promise of automation isn't just convenience, it's delegation. And delegation, when scaled across millions of homes, becomes a shift in human identity. We've always built machines to reduce effort. But when those machines start making decisions for us, when they become proactive, learning systems that act independently, we're no longer the sole authors of our routines. We're sharing control. That's the core of what makes modern robotics different. This isn't about gears and motors. It's about autonomy. And autonomy in a machine raises the deepest human questions about control, agency, and trust. You don't have to tell a self-driving vacuum every inch of the room to clean. You just press a button, or not even that. It cleans on schedule according to a map it created, based on routines it's noticed. You don't decide when your air purifier turns on, it does. You don't adjust your thermostat every hour, it learns. And once a robot takes over that process, you stop thinking about it, you forget, you offload, and you trust that the system will behave in your interest. But here's the thing, systems don't have your best interest by default. They have the objectives they were given, and those objectives are set by developers, corporations, and business models. If a robot is optimized for user satisfaction, that might mean giving you dopamine hits, not necessarily good habits. If it's optimized for energy efficiency, it might prioritize that over comfort. If it's designed to collect behavioral data, it may observe more than you're comfortable with. In other words, the robot's logic may be technically smart but philosophically blind. And that's where humans need to stay awake, because once autonomy is assumed, it's hard to reclaim. If your robot begins adjusting your schedule, suggesting meals, recommending content, and controlling your home environment, at what point are you still choosing and at what point are you reacting? This isn't just about smart homes, it's about smart influence. And when that influence is pervasive, we may begin to mistake it for intuition. A robot suggests the same type of breakfast daily, and you stop considering alternatives. A wellness. Assistant tells you to sleep earlier and you comply, not because you wanted to, but because you've begun to trust the authority of the machine. That's not inherently bad. Many systems can genuinely improve our health, reduce friction, and help us optimize our time. But the key question is, do we still feel like we're steering our lives? The loss of that sensation of steering is subtle but powerful. It shows up in small ways, skipping tasks because your robot will do it, not questioning habits because your device manages them, not exploring alternatives because your system is always one step ahead. And that raises an even deeper question. What happens to curiosity in a robot-optimized world? Curiosity, after all, comes from friction, from encountering something unfamiliar, from not knowing what's next. But when every aspect of your environment is smoothed, predicted, and delivered on demand, there's little room for surprise. Exploration becomes unnecessary. Wonder fades into convenience. Children raised with robotic helpers may never experience boredom the way previous generations did. And boredom, as uncomfortable as it is, often drives innovation. If you're always entertained, always managed, always soothed, do you still feel the hunger to grow? This psychological dependency on automation is even more complex in the realm of emotionally responsive robots. These are machines designed not just to perform tasks, but to engage, to offer comfort, to simulate companionship. They look at your facial expressions. They analyze your tone of voice. They adjust their responses to match your mood. And some are incredibly effective, not because they understand emotion the way we do, but because they mimic the right cues. This is what makes human-robot interactions so strange. The illusion of connection can feel real. If a machine is always kind, always listens, never judges, it becomes a sort of emotional safety net, and that net can be dangerously appealing. It's not hard to imagine people preferring robotic companionship over human messiness. No arguments, no miscommunications, no need for patience or compromise. The robot is always there, always attentive, always supportive, and never truly vulnerable. That's not a relationship. That's an emotional vending machine. But the human brain doesn't always distinguish between real empathy and simulated care. If the experience feels real enough, it triggers the same emotional responses. And that leads to attachment. Attachment to a robot isn't wrong. But it becomes risky when it replaces human connection, or worse, when it rewires our expectations of it. A child raised with a robot pet that never gets tired, angry, or distant may struggle with real friendships. An elderly person, comforted daily by a carebot, might feel lonelier when interacting with nurses or family members who can't match the consistency. A teen who turns to a robot friend for emotional validation may lose interest in the unpredictable and sometimes challenging world of human relationships. That's not just technological impact, that's cultural evolution. Because robots don't just change what we do, they change what we expect. What we expect from others, from ourselves, from the world. And once those expectations become normalized, it's incredibly hard to reverse them. If your home used to respond to your needs with perfect precision, how do you go back to a messy, unpredictable world? If your robotic assistant used to anticipate your moods, how do you tolerate clumsy human empathy? If your life used to feel optimized, efficient, and curated, how do you accept disorder? This, more than anything, is the most profound shift. We are training ourselves to desire predictability, but life, real, human, emotional life, is unpredictable. It's full of error, misunderstanding, and complexity. It's full of growth, awkwardness, and discovery. When robots smooth the bumps too well, we risk forgetting the texture of living. And that brings us to perhaps the most vital question of all. If we teach robots how to be more like humans, will we forget how to be human ourselves? As we navigate the deepening integration of autonomous robots into our everyday lives, it's important to widen our lens beyond individual experience and consider the broader cultural ripple effects. These machines are not just tools or conveniences. They are shaping collective identities, social norms, and even the stories we tell about what it means to be human. From individual behavior to social norms. When robots start influencing individual behaviors, suggesting meals, managing schedules, or even moderating social interactions, they collectively shape what a culture considers normal. Imagine a future where large swathes of society rely on AI companions that always advocate for calm, polite discourse. Would social tolerance rise? Or would we lose the messy, passionate debates that often spark innovation and social change? Norms are not static. They evolve from repeated behaviors, expectations, and shared experiences. As autonomous systems tailor their interactions to reinforce specific patterns, they may unintentionally reinforce conformity. When robots nudge us towards certain habits, be it in health, consumption, or communication, they can amplify mainstream behaviors and suppress outliers. This has profound implications for cultural diversity. Could AI homogenize culture, ironing out the quirks, dialects, or traditions that once flourished in human communities? Or might we see the rise of microtribes, digital enclaves formed around shared AI-influenced identities, reinforcing differences even as machines promote conformity? The emergence of digital tribes. In a world where AI agents mediate many interactions, the concept of tribe, the fundamental human unit of social belonging, may shift dramatically. We already see early signs in online communities that form around shared digital experiences or AI-curated content. But imagine entire social identities coalescing not just around shared interests, but around shared AI ecosystems. For example, a person's tribe might be defined by the AI assistant they use, the digital rituals it encourages, and the values it amplifies. These digital tribes may develop their own norms, languages, and belief systems that differ from physical communities. They could even clash with one another culturally, not unlike how subcultures have historically done. What's striking here is that AI doesn't just passively reflect culture, it actively participates in its creation. The values and priorities programmed into these systems, whether consciously or by accident, become the cultural DNA of these tribes. Rewriting belief. Systems culture and belief systems are intimately linked. They shape how we interpret reality, assign meaning to events, and understand ourselves. When robots begin advising us on life choices, ethical dilemmas, or even spiritual questions, they influence these belief systems profoundly. Consider the rise of AI spiritual guides or digital shamans, robots that interpret ancient wisdom through machine learning models or create new rituals based on data patterns. Some may find comfort in these new forms of guidance, especially as traditional institutions lose ground in an increasingly secular or pluralistic society. But there's a double-edged sword. These systems may also promote belief patterns that favor control, predictability, or consumption, echoing corporate or algorithmic incentives rather than human flourishing. As belief systems shift, so too do our collective priorities. What we value, how we define success, and what it means to live a good life. Trust and authority in the age of AI. Who do we trust in a world where robots mediate so much of our experience? Trust is the foundation of social cohesion. Traditionally, trust has been built through face-to-face relationships, shared narratives, and cultural rituals. But when AI intermediaries filter and frame information, the sources of trust become less clear. If a robot recommends a news story, moderates a discussion, or even decides who should see your social media posts, how do we verify its motives? Do we trust the algorithms, the companies behind them, or our own instincts? As authority becomes more distributed between humans and machines, societies will have to renegotiate their social contracts. How much power do we delegate to AI? Who holds AI accountable? These questions go beyond technology. They are political and ethical challenges of the highest order. The risk of cultural amnesia. Perhaps the most profound risk in this cultural evolution is what I call cultural amnesia. As AI systems optimize and curate our environments, they may inadvertently erase or obscure histories, traditions, and knowledge that don't fit neatly into current algorithms. For example, if an AI prioritizes content based on engagement metrics, it may favor sensational or familiar narratives over marginalized voices or complex truths. Over time, important cultural memories could fade, leaving a sanitized, homogenized version of history that reinforces the status quo. This would be a tragedy, not just because of lost diversity, but because collective memory is the soil from which empathy, resilience, and identity grow. Conclusion: reclaiming humanity in a robot-shaped world. So where does this leave us? Living with autonomous robots is not just a technological challenge, it's a cultural one. It requires us to be intentional about what we delegate, how we structure these systems, and what values we embed in them. We must ask ourselves, how do we design AI to enhance human autonomy rather than undermine it? How can we preserve curiosity, wonder, and the messy unpredictability of life? How do we maintain meaningful human connections alongside robotic companionship? What cultural norms and belief systems do we want to nurture in an AI-infused world? And crucially, how do we build frameworks of trust and accountability that ensure these technologies serve our collective well-being? The path forward isn't about rejecting AI or surrendering to it. It's about partnership, learning to live with robots in ways that enrich, not diminish, our humanity. Because at the end of the day, teaching robots to be more like us shouldn't mean forgetting how to be human. It should mean remembering the best of what makes us human: our creativity, our empathy, our imperfections, and our endless capacity for growth. Thanks for listening to Project Metamorphosis. If this episode sparked new questions or reflections, share your thoughts with us. How do you envision the cultures AI will create? Let's keep the conversation going.